Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I am your host, Sonal Lala. Joining us this evening is Ahelia Ramdas, a psychologist at the Children's Authority. Good evening, Ms. Ramdas, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us.
April is Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. Is the Children's Authority embarking on any special projects for this?
So every year in April, we increase the amount of activity that we do. So all through the year, we're working at education. We're working at going into communities, into schools, into organizations, anyone who would invite us to raise awareness, to have sensitization, to do workshops even on various topics with persons. And it's sort of increased during this month. We do a lot more, we take a lot more opportunities to come to the media and to really put the basic information out there and letting people know where you can look. But the entire child protection framework during this month sort of just increases their activity. Gender and Child Affairs did recently launch their In the Know series where they're going into specific communities, again with the aim of meeting with children, meeting with parents, giving them the information, giving them the help that they need. So while we are much more visible during April, it is the same work that we do all through the year, trying to impress upon people that child protection is everyone's business, trying to impress upon people how important it is for them to help seek the information, make the relevant reports, and start changing the way that we think about how we care for our children.
The brutal murder of 4-year-old Amara Lalit. The act was allegedly committed by a close male relative of her mother. What kind of support is there for immediate family members, neighbors, or even law enforcement officers responding to these matters?
So the first line of support, of course, would be the Victims Support Unit, which is attached to the TTPS. So they would respond in a situation like this, providing that counseling and that extra, psychosocial support for the victims' families, members of the community, the police. Of course, if there are children involved, the Children's Authority also may get involved. We may send our CSAs out into the field to conduct the relevant investigations where children are concerned and then provide whatever support is needed.
How difficult is it for the Children's Authority to get involved? Is it a collaboration between the Children's Authority and the police and other agencies as well?
Yes, so I wouldn't say it's difficult at all. Once some incident like this comes to light and the police gets involved, once there are children involved, automatically the Children's Authority will be alerted. We will action or put into action our processes as well to ensure that we're working alongside the police. In instances where there are family members above the age of 18 not under our purview, then we also work collaboratively with other stakeholders in the child protection framework, in just the framework that we have in trying to make available. So whether it's National Family Services, for instance, we also do engage the relevant stakeholders.
Tell me about some of those processes and in terms of what goes on behind the scenes in the Children's Authority. Do you all do your own investigation when a matter like this comes up?
Yes, we do. So I would say, and I want to make it very clear that it's not, of course, criminal investigation, but once the Children's Authority receives a report that a child or children have been maltreated, so we're talking about any form of neglect, any form of abuse, and we know there's physical abuse, emotional abuse, as well as sexual abuse, then we take that report, we triage it by level of risk. So whether a child is in imminent danger, needs to be removed immediately from an environment, or if they are not in imminent danger and they remain with their family or another relative that might be a safe space, our investigative team then goes into the community, conducts their investigations to substantiate these allegations or these reports that we're receiving. So we don't just receive reports and jump into gear. We have to make sure that they're valid reports and that the type of abuse or neglect is substantiated before our other processes kick in. So whether if we have substantiated abuse, for example, and the children are receiving supports from other agencies then, or CSAs, who are social work trained in most instances, they then follow along with those children through that process. If they're not receiving care from anywhere else, our agency, whether they need to be evaluated psychologically, and then recommendations make for further interventions, and that is what occurs. And it's important for us to note that our Children's Services Associates, they work with the family from the beginning to the end. So from the time of substantiation to the point at which the child has received all the interventions, is on a better trajectory, is at that point where they are healing and now developing and growing normally, and then, our monitoring decreases as that occurs. So that can take months, that can take years. It really depends on the circumstance.
As with a medical emergency, time is of the essence, and I understand that time may be of the essence when you all are undergoing these investigations as well. From the point in time where you investigate to a point in time where you come to a recommendation or give support, how long does that take?
It varies. Again, it does vary on a case-by-case basis according to the level of risk. So like I said before, if a report is received and we realize that the child is in imminent danger, or the children are in imminent danger, meaning that they're in the home with the perpetrator who is at that moment physically abusing them, threatening their lives, or they're in the same space with someone who would have sexually molested a child, then they are removed from that environment. And we first seek a family member that they can be placed with, which we call a fit person. If a family member is not available, a close friend of the family who can be trusted and also deemed suitable. And then from there we move out into foster care or children's residence or what have you. And so the same way we triage risk in terms of whether they are removed, whether they remain, it's the same way we have to allocate resources to cases that come our way. So we would love that we have the opportunity, or the ability rather, to deal with each case as they come in, but that's not the situation that we do have. So we have to also assign risk or see cases based on the risk level, the needs at that time.
In Trinidad and Tobago, I can list a few instances where children, in particular girls, were murdered by a close male relative. In the case of Emily Anna Montoro, Hope Arispandes, and Kiana Kamabach, the suspect was the stepfather. Are there signs that mothers should be looking out for?
So what I can say statistically, in most cases, when we have abuse, it is a close relative, whether it's a primary caregiver, the mother, the father, grandparents, auntie, uncle, step-parents, it's more than likely. We've grown up with this idea that it's a stranger on the street that's coming to take our children or harm our children, but oftentimes it's someone within the home, someone in close relation to the family, known to the child. And it is important that as women, as men, because I want to also be clear that, perpetrators aren't male solely. We have females who perpetrate crime as well, and abuse towards our children. It's important for us to know who we are bringing into our children's lives. We have to know what their track records are with children. Ask them the tough questions, engage them in that kind of conversation. What is their relationship with their own children if they have children of their own? What is their relationship with children generally? Observe them as they interact. And don't be too quick or rush into bringing them into your home space and expecting that, I share a relationship with this person, that they're going to automatically care and love my child the way that I would care and love my child. We want to take a look at what is their conflict resolution style. How do they typically deal with conflict and disagreement? We need to know that. That needs to be talked through as well. We need to take a look at, their levels of aggression, and just being mindful and paying attention, and again, not being too hasty to introduce someone into the home. And I say that if it's someone coming into the home, a step-parent or what have you, but then in the instance of even fathers and mothers within this space, biological relations to our children, we need to be mindful of all of that as well. We need to talk it through. I think we've come to that point where we need to confront it. We can't take for granted that everyone knows how to be a parent or knows how to parent. We can't take for granted that everyone knows how to resolve conflict or how to deal with stressors. We have so many people walking around that they're not even aware of their own triggers and their own trauma, and so they don't know how to cope when things become overwhelming. And so we need to start facing those things head on, having those conversations, and putting ourselves in that place to learn more about it so we're equipped appropriately.
How often do we see these perpetrators having a history of possibly mental illness or anger?
I want to make sure that the public is aware that something like child abuse, something like domestic violence, it happens in any circumstance, any economic bracket, any religion, any race. And so I don't want to pigeonhole this issue to one particular group of persons. But what I can see is that factors such as being a single parent or living in a single parent home, having low socioeconomic status, so not having that financial freedom and flexibility, having limited support, having ongoing struggles with mental health, they do add to the pressures and they do add to sometimes the challenges of parenting or the challenges of dealing with stresses as they would come. And so it's important that we take a look at what our own limitations are. And that's not the easiest thing to do. You know, it's not easy to look at yourself and see, okay, where do I need more help? Or how am I falling short that I might need more help? And then be able to ask for it. That's difficult. And also it's difficult in that, where do I actually get this support? How do I actually access it? So it's important that programs like this exist. It's important that agencies such as my own, the TTPS, Childline, National Family Services, the Ministry of Education, we continue to do interviews such as these, go out and do public sensitizations in education so persons can be aware of what they need to look at, how they need to identify that they themselves need some help, and then where they can go. So, you know, all of that to say, yes, you know, sometimes we do see mental health challenges being a significant part of the profile, but it's not the only factor that we need to be mindful of in the least. And I think we need to take a look at ourselves and how we parent and our family structure and circumstances holistically and see, okay, all of the areas that we do need to touch on and improve on, get some help in.
There's a train of thought that, you know, some of these matters only happen in low-income families, and I know that's not true. Would you like to dispel some of these rumors?
The only way I can dispel it is saying that, hey, it's not true. Statistically, that's not what we have seen. On a case-by-case basis, it is not what we have seen. So while parents may be struggling more, single parents or persons who are in a low-income situation might be struggling more to provide certain levels of support to their children, whether it's supervision, whether it's their physical needs, you know, food and shelter and clothing and these things. It is not divorced from persons who come from higher income homes. The idea of abuse, the idea of maltreatment, the idea of domestic violence, it is not separate and apart. So we do see instances in circumstances like that as well, or homes like that as well. And we need to, for us to actively tackle domestic violence, actively tackle child abuse. And I have to say, oftentimes when we have cases of child abuse, there may be domestic violence occurring in the home. Or if it's a situation of domestic violence, that may co-occur with abuse of the children in the home as well. So it's distinctly different things, but it's not separate and apart from. And we have to get ourselves in that place where we take accountability as citizens of a country where these issues and these challenges have been ongoing for years and escalating. And, you know, as sad, and we're horrified and we're saddened at the number of instances or incidents that have come to light over the past few weeks in Trinidad and Tobago, where children are concerned, where families are concerned. But we have to get to the point where the average citizen now is enraged enough, is upset enough to say, hey, how do we make a change? And that means taking accountability, each one. How can I make a difference? How can I get more information out there? Can I go onto the TTPS, the Children's Authority? Can I go onto their social medias and their websites and share information? Can I engage my family members and my friends in the relevant conversations? Can I then teach my children, explicitly teach my children how to recognize danger, how to keep themselves safe, how to openly communicate when something has happened to them? It's such a complex thing, you know, the issue in itself being complex and the solution being so multifaceted.
What advice would you give mothers who bring men around their children and possibly leave them in their care as well?
Again, we need to be mindful of who we are bringing into our spaces, who we are leaving our children with. Like I said before, statistically, perpetrators of child abuse have been persons known to children, close to children, directly related to children. And so it does not matter if it's a boyfriend, if it's their estranged father, if it's a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, a close family relation. Again, we need to be mindful of what is their track record with children. How do they handle conflict? How do they handle frustration when they become overwhelmed? How do they treat with boundaries? That's another big issue we have in Trinidad and Tobago, where there's not enough respect for boundaries. We have this habit where we push our children to kiss every auntie and uncle, related or not, hug every auntie or uncle, related or not, send our kids to overnights here, there, and everywhere, whether related or not, without being mindful of who these persons are, being mindful that our children might be uncomfortable in situations. So I would say, no, you have to have social support. You can't live in isolation. Social support helps you with something as basic as supervision of your children if you have to go out to work, if you have errands to run, but also helping you carry that, I don't want to say burden or load, right? Carry the load, because parenting, we know, is a huge, huge task. You need persons to help you through that process. So you need to make sure that they are trusted. You need to know things about them, and you can only do that by asking. Too often we fall into that trap where we're afraid to ask those hard questions because we don't want to rock the boat. But it's time, I think, and time has passed, that we get comfortable with rocking the boat and we know who we're exposing our children to. Look at how they handle conflict, kids, and then look at how your children react and respond to them as well. Because children, too often they're ignored or dismissed as not having sense, not having an opinion, not knowing themselves well enough. And we have to be mindful that children are astute. They're emotional just as we are. They're intuitive just as we are. And we need to be mindful of what their reaction is as well, how comfortable they feel, how safe they feel. And I always implore parents to take the time to get to know your children. Sitting down in the same room with them while they watch television is not getting to know your children. We have to engage in conversation. We have to put ourselves in that place where we do activities they like, right, to build a trust and to build relationship, and that open form of communication with them so that they know they can come to you with whatever might be bothering them. And you can go to them and ask questions, and the lines are open, judgment-free. Building that relationship also allows you to take a look at changes in their behavior that might signal something is off with your child, right? So many of the signs of child abuse mirrors normal developmental challenges. You have withdrawal, you have irritability, moodiness. You may have your adolescent age children favoring advice from their friends and pulling away from you. And all of these things are so normal and as children go through their developmental trajectory. But at the same time, they can be signs that something more serious is happening. And so we want to know that if you have genuine relationships with your children and you take the time to know them, it's going to be easier for you to sift through those things and identify when something is way off with your child and may need a closer look.
What are some of the most prevalent forms of child abuse in Trinidad and Tobago?
Neglect is the most prevalent type of maltreatment that we come across. And oftentimes it can co-occur with another form of abuse, so it's neglect closely followed by or sexual abuse and physical abuse, emotional abuse being the least reported. But oftentimes when we get into our investigation, we realize that there are a number of these situations occurring at the same time, yeah? And we find that it is spread across all ages. So we have babies, toddlers that come into us for being maltreated, and all the way up to children who are 17 years old, turning 18. You find that more often than not, we get reports for children in middle childhood to mid-adolescence. And not for any other reason than they are the ones that are probably caught in school by a teacher, or they say something to a relative, or they themselves feel empowered enough to make a report. But it is really a sad situation to see what our children face. We think about abuse and we think about the one or two smacks on the hand, but it's so horrific what our children are going through, the types of physical maltreatment that they do face. We also have to start taking a serious look at sexual abuse in this country and the attitudes and the beliefs that continue to prop this really, I have to use the word disgusting, form of abuse against not only our girls but our boys as well. We need to start teaching our children from very young what is good touch and bad touch, what is a good secret versus a bad secret. We need to teach them boundaries. We need to teach them how to be aware of persons who may come into their space and take advantage of them from very young. We want to make sure we use child-appropriate and age-appropriate language as they grow through. It's not a one-off conversation we have. It's a conversation we have to continue having with them as they grow and develop, giving them more and more information so that they are armed with the tools that they also need to safeguard themselves, to come to you, to come to someone if they do need safety.
Simply put, is child abuse preventable?
Yes, child abuse is preventable, and the onus is on the adults. The onus is on you and I to start getting our children to a place of safety. We receive, on average, over 5,000 cases for the year, and that's reported cases. And not all cases are reported because sometimes the police may intervene in a situation, or the school may intervene in a situation, not even us not receiving a direct report, and then abuse comes to light. Or we're investigating one particular instance and we realize it's not just child, it's the children in the family at large, the cousins and what have you. So we really, really, really need to get to that place of accountability, like I said before. Yes, child abuse is preventable, but the onus is on the adults, the caregivers, to educate themselves, to put themselves in the place of knowing what their limitations are, seeking the help they need, and getting the information to change the way that we parent. Because we have to take a different look at how we parent. We need to move away from punishment, move towards discipline. We need to move towards valuing our children as individuals that take up a space, that are deserving of protection, are deserving of living a life that is free from violence. And we really need to start holding each other accountable.
After incidents like these, such as with Amara Lalit, in the months and the weeks after, does the Children's Authority offer counseling? I know you're a psychologist as well. When the incident occurs, it is a difficult process and so on, but in the months and the weeks to come, it develops into something, and people are traumatized and have to go through all these notions. Do you all offer counseling and after a couple of weeks? Yeah.
In the initial stages, like I said, victim support is there. If there are children involved in these incidents, then the Children's Authority do get involved. We do have some in-house psychologists that provide counseling, but we also work with private practitioners as well. And we also do send referrals to other stakeholder agencies that do offer counseling and support for families. So again, it would come down to the level of risk, the availability of resources, how we provide support. We address every concern. Yes, whether it's internally or whether we refer out, we are sure to follow along with these families very closely. And while our main focus, as we are mandated by the law, is on children, whatever resources families need to build capacity, we also do ensure that they have the relevant referrals. The caseworkers do follow up to ensure that they have taken in their referrals, gotten their appointments, are being consistent with attending these appointments. Because at the end of the day, we know that children thrive best in a family setting with their family of origin. And so our aim is to work towards building capacity within that family for reintegration to occur. If it is absolutely not possible because it is not in the best interest of a child or it is not keeping a child safe, then we look for a relative that can provide that family setting for that child. Again, I say we call them fit persons. They are also assessed to make sure that they are suitable and providing a safe environment for children, because we don't want to take them out of one situation to put them into another that may cause them a different type of harm. So we are very cautious about ensuring that the relatives are also safe spaces for the children. If that fails, because sometimes family members, for whatever reason, they're not able or willing to do so, then we look at foster care. Our foster care system is very limited. We have very few approved foster care providers in Trinidad and Tobago. But it is also the next best alternative because we're still placing children within a familial setting to get that type of love and care and attention. We also have something called kinship foster care, which is a new system that we have brought on, where relatives can also be assessed to become kinship foster carers for their relatives. And then, barring all of that, we try to match children with the best community residents that would meet their specific needs. So we really do try our best to ensure that children get what they need, what they deserve. They have the right type of environment. Do we need more? Of course we do. We'll always need more. So I want to appeal, to our viewers. If you are watching, if you think you are able to provide a safe space for children, reach out to the Children's Authority and let them know you're interested in foster care or interested in getting more information in terms of how you can help start fighting this scourge that we call child abuse and start helping grow our society and move away from the way that we currently treat children to something that is better and safer and brighter for them.
I heard you earlier when you spoke about, getting permission from your children, not letting them kiss every auntie and uncle and so on. And I want to bring the social media aspect into it because I recently spoke to someone at a media launch of a BMW and so on. And they actually talked about their children and not posting them to social media without their permission. Is this something the Children's Authority would like to share? What's the correct thing to do?
We have to be careful about posting our children with or without permission. Just the idea of posting your children online opens them up to predators. We know that, and it was made worse over the course of the pandemic, where predators have moved their game to online and they're targeting our children online, not only knowing their locations, so we can turn on locations, and when you post a picture you put where it is, and everyone has access to that information, but just having your children visible and open to that kind of opportunity for attack. Groomers, so we have something that is very serious that is called grooming that our children are now faced with. That's individuals who play the long game, right? Their focus is to befriend a child, convince that child that they are the ones that are supportive of them, they are the ones that love them, they are the ones that can provide for them, alienate them from their family, and then escalate that relationship to soon ask for sexual favors, right? And that's really prevalent online. And so we want to make sure that we protect our children, know what our children are doing online from what they're not doing online, put the relevant checks and balances in place. And back to your question about permission, I think we need to dispel this idea that our children don't have boundaries of their own and don't have comfort levels of their own. So yes, it's our job to guide and teach our children. So there are some young people who love to post everything. And as a parent, I would say, no, monitor that. Explain to them why that's not safe, right? And on the flip side, if your child is not comfortable, why would you willingly make them uncomfortable? Why would you willingly seek to make them unhappy or make them feel unsafe? So I think we need to start listening to our children a little bit more, right? There's a balance between, parents like to hit back when we do parenting sessions and we try to teach about positive parenting and changing the ways that we speak to our children and the ways that we approach certain, forms of discipline and different things. There's a pushback, I'm not their friend, I'm not their little friend. You don't have to be a friend to have a level of respect for your children or to teach your children, guide your children in a particular direction, right? I think it's important that we move away from being fearful. And I'm not talking about having that healthy fear that, this is your parent, right? But I'm talking about so terrified that your parents will probably knock you down or do something much worse to you, whether it's in public or in the privacy of your home. And we need to realize that more and more our children are exposed to so many different things. They're learning so many different things. The children of today are not the same children we were when we were younger because we were simply not exposed to the amount of things that they are now. And I think we need to start paying attention and listening more and being respectful. One of the things that we talk about in parenting is modeling the right behaviors and the right attitudes that we would like our children to have, because we well know, you know, if you're going to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. And that's the best way to teach children. I want you to be a respectful person. I will teach by showing you what respect looks like. So I think that is very important.
Does the Children's Authority have any public education campaigns about this, posting online and so on, whether any past or possibly the future?
So we do have quite a lot of content on our Facebook page. You can search us, Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, on Facebook. We have a lot of information, graphics. We have a lot of videos that are available. And anyone wanting more information can contact us at info@ttchildren.org. That's info@ttchildren.org, and request a sensitization or request a workshop. We have worked with members of parliament and councillors in communities. We've worked with schools and religious organizations. Once they reach out and say, hey, we have a group of people, we want to learn more about positive parenting, or we want to learn more about abuse, or we want to learn more about safeguarding our children, or we want to learn more about whatever the topic may be, once we're able to lock down the details and we have someone available, we facilitate, and we are happy to do so. We are happy to join with other agencies in any campaigns that they have themselves and be a presence there to answer the questions, to give the information.
Your final thoughts?
I think as a society we have come to that point where a decision has to be made. We cannot sit back any longer and hope that the authorities figure it out. We have to realize that child protection is everyone's business, that I have a responsibility to ensure that the way we treat with our nation's children changes, that I will do what is needful. I will have those conversations. I will challenge those family members. I will make the reports, which can be done anonymously if I must, to ensure that children are safe. We need to get back to that place where we are our brother's keepers, where our children are concerned. And we do need to get back to that place of a village raising a child and growing the right and the safe type of social support to help us through. I want to challenge Trinidad and Tobago to really take a look at yourself, take a look at what you can do differently, and take responsibility.
Ms. Ramdas, I want to thank you very much for joining us. I know it's your first time on Delving Deeper, but we'll have to have you back again because these are some very topical issues, and I'm sure there's a lot of information for the public to digest after our session here.
We thank you guys so much for having us on the program, and we will be happy to come back at any time.
And that's our show. Join us at the same time next week for another episode of Delving Deeper. I am Sonolala, and on behalf of the entire crew, have a great night.